how, if at all, should a problem be dealt with in a meeting or problems? And the first one is a drunk person in a meeting who is disruptive, even to the point of being violent. The question is, how do we handle that?
Let me give you an example of what I think is the ideal way. I was speaking at a group down the road somewhere, and a drunk woman came in. and a drunk woman is exciting. And so the whole crowd was including me, because she came in and she went to the kitchen and started singing, and she was a lousy singer, lousy. God.
What song was she singing? What song was she singing?
I couldn't even tell. It wasn't very good. I'm not going to buy the record. I tell you. But it was typical of what you see in a meeting. Everybody was looking at everybody else, so somebody needs to do something. That all those signals going around. Nobody said anything, but it was saying, somebody, you'll go call 911, or you'll go get the police, or whatever. And there was one woman that the oldest member in the group. She just very quietly got up, walked back to the kitchen, put her arms around that gal, took her to a room, sat down and talked with her. That's what you do with that kind of thing. If you're in the program long enough that you understand how to deal with that kind of a situation. Everybody else was sort of sitting there looking at each other, what do we do? And the older member, of course, was more experienced. And so she did exactly what she ought to do. Go back there, put the arm around her, took her in a room, spent some time with her. They came out together. And that's the way. I mean, we don't throw people out of AA. That just is ridiculous. We don't want to get to that point. But normally we can handle it. I've done it with people just exactly the same way. Yeah.
Would it make more sense for maybe two more experienced or older members to go with that person, to visit with them, as say we would on a 12-step call?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, particularly if it's looks like a troublesome thing, somebody's a troublemaker. If it's just somebody that's under the influence, normally you can handle that, Yeah. But you can tell if you got somebody that's looking for trouble, and I think then it is wise to get some strength in numbers, that.
So the other part of the question, though, for instance, and I'm sure it's happened, thank God, I don't guess it's ever happened in our group, or any that I've ever been in, but if somebody does show up and they're clearly violent, or maybe a member, one or two, trying to take them out of the room, and they're being combative, I guess, how would we handle that?
Because I can tell you, if I show up to them eating drunk, that's going to be me.
Yeah.
I'm not a happy drunk.
Yeah.
Just a warning.
Yes. Well, we've only had one that I really thought was, and he wasn't being flagrantly aggressive or anything, but you could tell he was the kind of guy that would get goofy. I just went over and talked with him a little bit, and it was like talking to a tree. But then I said, come on, go. But there were a lot of people around, so I said, come on, go outside here with me for a little bit. And it wasn't, to do any scuffling or anything, but I wanted to get him in a private place. And so I just took him out there, and our old meeting place, where we were out there, and there's a little alley right there beside it. And I just took him right there in that alley, and we talked a little bit, and got him settled down. Yeah. And normally that can happen. The worst thing to do is just kind of rush in and start trying to throw people out. That's the worst thing to do with it. But I think normally if you go about it and treat people with some courtesy, or some that you're just trying to solve a problem, and not just bully the guy like you throwing him out of a bar or something. I think that's the worst mistake we can make. Yeah.
So it might be fair to say that some groups at their business meeting maybe at least address that particular question, because it's either, if it does come up, then again, a situation like that where you think a guy could probably hang in the balance and go either way, certainly sure. I think two members should try to talk to him and get him
if there's any uncertainty, that's always good.
And
Yeah.
and if it just completely gets out of control, is it appropriate to call 911 at that point?
Yeah, last resort. Yeah,
Yeah.
normally we can. I mean, we've been around enough bar rooms. We usually handle that okay.
Okay. All right.
You know, I've only seen it. I've seen it happen a few times, and I remember you had told that story after an incident over there in the other room over there. It had happened one night, and you had told me that story. I think it was just me and you, and I was really early on then, and I appreciate you telling me that because that's been in my memory since then. And it's happened a few other times, and I think it's always been a woman that it's in the meetings I've been at, and I think it's a real credit to the women in the program in this area because every single time I've seen it happen, I've seen two women get up quietly, go talk to the woman, they take them to another room, and I think
it
they
usually
handle it
works.
perfectly.
It's rare that it doesn't work. Yeah, because I mean, I don't think people come into a room that they want to make trouble. They're just trying to make a little noise, maybe, or something like that. But yeah, it's usually easy to manage it. Yeah, the last one I took down was a drug addict, and he wasn't acting out. But I just took him down, and I took him all the way to the end of this building. And nobody here but me and him.
And that was from the earlier question too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was on there, but but it's easy to deal with if you do it in a courteous and thoughtful kind of way. If you come on hard and you're going to try to bulldog your way through, there's going to be trouble. That's just automatic,
Okay, so we've all of us have probably been in a meeting at some point where we feel like someone has hijacked the meeting and or goes off topic for an unfair length of time. Question is, what's a good guideline for allowing someone to talk without asking them to pass? Because, I mean, everybody's got a story to tell, and whatever people are sharing is probably at least as important to them, and it could be important to somebody else in the room just because I think maybe they're off topic or they've hijacked the meeting, but the question is, is there a guideline as far as, is it 3 minutes, is it 5 minutes, is it 8 to 10 minutes that a person may go on and on, whether they're on topic or off topic? I mean, at that point they've hijacked the meeting. Is there any kind of guideline? There's
not any standard set anywhere, but the typical thing is 3 to 5 minutes is a max. And the big thing that's missing, including at our group, is having people well prepared to lead meetings. You can't lead meetings if you don't know how. And knowing how to call on people, knowing how to step in, how to say, hang on with that and we'll go here. But a leader who's prepared can handle that usually very well. But if you get into a thing of saying, this harsh kind of stuff of, stop that, whatever, that's when you start doing some damage. But people that are prepared and know how that, anyway, it's a matter of getting people prepared so that they're not just thrown in there and saying, oh, you'll be okay, Well, if you don't know, if you've never led a meeting, man, you're lost as a turkey up there.
Yeah, I know. Early on, I mean, in different meetings do it different ways because each group is autonomous and that's their choice. But the way I was always leading a discussion is I primed the pump a little and then just kind of let it freewheel. And, or I would call on a person and then that they would call on the next person and kind of go around the room like that. Or if it freewheels, then at that point you get that god-awful silence that sometimes it might only be 30 seconds, but it feels like 30 minutes. And I was shown, just like you said, or taught or coached, whatever you want to call it, that the way, an effective way to lead a meeting, not the only way to lead a meeting, but an effective way is to, when I prime the pump, is that I call on folks that I go ahead and call on people to share. What I find that does is if a person is going beyond 3 to 5 minutes or off topic, I feel like I've at least got a little more I'm better prepared because I've called on them to step in and say, wrap it up. So we can let some other folks share and do that in a way that's not offensive or abrasive. So that's always helpful. One of the challenges is that maybe if I'm sitting up there, I'm just calling on people I know. There may be some new people, either new to the program or new to our group that I don't know their name, or some people that don't get called on at all just for sake of time. But the way I try to lead a meeting like that is if I don't know a person's name, I'll just kind of point at them and ask them if they'd like to share. The other thing is, once I get into the meeting, leading the discussion, I will kind of open it up and say, we're probably not going to have time, or maybe toward the end of the meeting, we're not going to have time to get around to everybody. Is there somebody would like to, step up and share, and just kind of open it up like that, knowing that if there's that deadly silence, I'm going to follow up with a call on someone. So, I think for me that's been helpful in either somebody hijacking a meeting or getting off topic.
I tell you one thing I do is I'm usually think 3 people ahead, because I know who I'm going to call on. And otherwise, if you stop and have a hesitation in there, you're going to lose your continuity of whatever you're talking about. You'll lose it, and it'll get off into something else. But that's just a technique, of 3 ahead, and then that way you're ready to go. You'll stay in control. But I think the big thing that any group ought to do, including ours, is spend some time just helping the people to get prepared to lead meetings. And you don't just automatically know that,
Well, and the next thing is crosstalk and how to deal with. Is crosstalk okay? Is it not okay? First of all,
I don't think it's okay at all. If you've got a leader, I mean, if you just got a bull session, that's just fat mouthing. It doesn't matter whether you got a leader or not, because nobody will follow anyway. But I think crosstalk it screws up a meeting. It normally will screw up a meeting.
And why is that?
Becomes a bull session.
In my experience in crosstalking is that all of a sudden you've got people trying to fix people, and what my job is there to share my experience, strength, and hope, not to tell you what you should and ought to do and fix why your life is falling apart.
Well, the other thing is that it keeps people from joining in. It'll be dominated by people that are going to make the most noise, and then people that are a little shy about getting in there won't get in. They'll just sit back and be observers.
Now, we touched on this a little bit about a non-alcoholic in a closed meeting, and I guess this would relate to somebody that we know clearly, maybe is a member of Al-Anon, maybe has been coming for a few weeks or a few months, and they're non-alcoholic. I mean, maybe you just know that. How's the best way, to inform them about the importance of them sitting in a
The most important thing is privacy. Do it privately. Yet nobody wants to be corrected publicly. And, I've seen people try to deal with addicts coming in publicly by saying, you're in the wrong meeting, you need to go somewhere. Anytime you embarrass people publicly, you got a problem. And so I think you have to be very cautious about that.
And that question, sorry, were you?
Yeah.
That question, for me, it stemmed from I was at a meeting that's a closed meeting. And there was a person there who comes very regularly with another person, a member of the program. But I know that this woman is not, she does not identify herself as an alcoholic. I know that she's not an alcoholic. She comes to support her, the member that she comes with. But she was at a closed meeting and she shared. And I wasn't going to say anything at all, but I was just curious as to what.
I'd talk to the partner.
Well, and to me, it's if I'm bringing somebody with me, I have more respect for the program than to bring a non-alcoholic into a closed meeting. But that's just my personal view on it. I can't force that on anybody else.
I think that's the way it ought to be. And if somebody does it, they may just a lot of times people don't know it until they learn. And so some people just don't know the difference. And But some of us have got to just say, hey, listen, the closed meeting means alcoholics only. But that to me, that's the thing is that because a lot of people just don't know, and they fumble along and do what they think's right.
I had an experience years ago. It was in another home group that I was a member of. It was a guy and his girlfriend, and I don't know. I think they had came. We were meeting on. I think they had came to several meetings, and he had brought her, and she always listened, but he was an alcoholic, and after a while, I did talk to him after the meeting and explained to him that it's a closed meeting for alcoholics only. That if you're non-alcoholic, I did address that, and of course she said that she was an alcoholic. That I encourage her, maybe go to an Al-Anon because I had an Al-Anon meeting going on at the same time, and I don't know, but I don't recall them ever coming back to that meeting, and I always sort of regretted. Because I didn't do it. We had a good conversation. In fact, I thought it went extremely well, and I guess it went so well. Sometimes I feel like I made them feel like they weren't welcome, and I didn't mean to come across like that. And that's always sort of troubled me some.
Well, they weren't welcome. That's why they felt that way. but you gotta. It's kind of like I told the guy I took down the hall that night, and I don't know if you remember now, but he's a big, tall, black guy, and there were two of them came in that were addicts, and I said, we need to get hold of it, and I told Earl Brown that I was going to get hold of it. Well, Earl jumped the gun, and he went at the guy. Well, Earl, my God, he's about like a chainsaw trying to be subtle, and got into a real messy situation. And so the next week I caught the guy who it was, and told him, I said, you got a couple of minutes after the meeting? He said, sure. Same guy that Earl tangled with, and I took him down, and I took him all the way to the end of the hall down there. I mean, way back. I know he had to think, what in the world is this guy doing to me? But I took him all the way to the end of the church because I wanted total privacy. And we went at it, and it was no debate. We had an excellent meeting. But we were just talking sensibly about what we're dealing with. And I told him in the course of it, I said, look, I'm not really concerned about you. I mean, I care about you, but I'm not concerned about you. I've listened to you. You know what your problem is, and you know what you can do. I'm worried about the guy who comes in here believing what we've said, that this will be a closed meeting, and you don't have to worry about, publicity or stuff like that. And I said, if you're sitting there, I can't tell him that. Mm-hmm. And he fully understood that. And I guarantee you, he walked out of this building a friend of AA. But it's how we do it that's so important, that with understanding and and most people will understand if you're courteous with them.
All right. So what about profane language by a speaker? When we ask someone to speak, their job is to share their experience, strength, and hope, and
hopefully not offend anyone.
Yeah, hopefully not offend anyone. But some speakers do use a fair amount of profanity from the podium, and luckily that's not really been a huge issue in most groups that I've been to. But if a speaker is using profanity, at what point?
I don't worry about the speaker. I worry about the chairman. I worry about who invited him, because I think it's our responsibility to give the person some signals that, particularly if he's got a tendency to go do into that kind of stuff. But that's who I look to. I look to the person who invited him, and it just simply say, if you got any question about it, is that we try to avoid a profanity in our group, and most people respect that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What about if someone's in a meeting and they're sharing something that is definitely not in AA or goes against the big book?
It's kind of a wide open thing, isn't it?
I think for me, it is wide open. Say this is my personal experience on it. You know, I was helping lead a meeting one time, and I read a section from the Bible, and it was almost a whole chapter, I think, is what I was told later. But you know, I think it came down to sponsorship. You know, I probably knew I shouldn't have, but at the same token, I really didn't know I shouldn't have. But I mean, my sponsor just talked with me and said, you know, listen, this is kind of how things go, and you know, and I think he handled it very well. He didn't call me out on it in the meeting. Nobody called me out on it in the meeting. Nothing was said about it. But you know, just kind of one-on-one, like we've been saying for everything else. It's just, you know, this is how things go here. You know, a simple suggestion, which I took to heart, and you know, I haven't made that mistake since.
So a person has the freedom to do that if they're sitting in a meeting and they've got a sponsee that has done something goofy. But the challenge is if someone's in our meeting and does that, you know, and their you know, I'm not their sponsor, or their sponsor's not there to hear that. I guess at that point it depends on, you know, what the infraction is or what the situation is. I think it goes along with what we were saying earlier. It's good that if it warrants a discussion, try to have a heart-to-heart after the meeting, one-on-one, not in the earshot of anybody else, and trying to. And I think the point is to make sure that we don't dilute Alcoholics Anonymous. That when people come into our group, they know they're going to hear the message of Alcoholics Anonymous and not some other message.
Yeah, I think it can be ticklish, but I think there are times when you got to put the hook on folks. I've done it, and you hate to do it, but I think there's some times that when somebody just, because you got to think about the common welfare, and just letting one guy blow off with just rudely and crudely to the other bunch, I think you just have a responsibility to get it stopped one way or another, and that it's awful. We may need to, like in our program meetings, to tell people, remind them that we try to have a pretty clean meeting and appreciate no use of profanity. Yeah. And most people respect that.
I just remember one instance. It's not about profanity. I guess it kind of goes just about things that aren't in AA, things that aren't in the big book. You know, trying to stay away from. We're not a religious organization here. I mean, it's in our preamble that. But down at the intergroup, we got an email one time from a guy. I don't know what meeting he attended. It doesn't matter. But he had said he went to a meeting and had been he felt rudely corrected on something he had said about a religious organization in the meeting, and the person, he said, was very rude to them in front of God and everybody about saying, this is AA, we don't do that here. And the guy said he was completely put off by that, and you know, basically in so many words made it clear he didn't want to have anything to do with that meeting anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that it can. The manner in which we address things, I think it's very damaging, because I think we're dealing with life and death here. I think we could be a little bit more sensitive to each other at times. But that's just my experience on it. Something I just remembered.
Yeah, I know normally if I bring a speaker in, I usually know them, you know, and I know they're going to be okay. But if I got any uncertainty, I'll tell them that before we come in that you know, that we try to hold off on profanity. And appreciate if you'd do the same, you know.
All right, well, we're going to move on to the next question.